Wanna take us one trip. I've been near your.
Here's a question for you. Does age affect how safe you are on the road as a driver? Statistics show that the very young and the very old are the most likely to be seriously injured or killed in a crash. But there are different reasons for this. Young drivers lack experience and are known for having more difficulties in controlling impulses, for example, particularly young males, such as the thrill they get from driving fast. Their passengers are often, unfortunately, also caught up in this increased risk of collision, whereas older drivers have a great deal of experience and are less likely to take such risks. However, they are more vulnerable to being injured or killed in a collision compared to younger counterparts. Take, for example, a 17-year-old who falls down a couple of steps. They probably get a few bruises, but otherwise they get up and carry on with what they were doing. But what about an 85-year-old falling down those very same steps? They're far more likely to break a hip, for example. The statistics which are used to show how age affects driving are only recorded when injuries or fatalities happen. So you can see there's one clear reason why a number of older drivers are more likely to be included in these statistics. However, research also shows that they are no more risk to other road users than any other age group because they tend to compensate for these gradual age related reduction in skill levels. Their main vulnerability tends to be in the type of crash which can easily be explained by a reduction in cognitive skills. These collision types often get blamed on failing eyesight, but my experience suggests it's far more likely to be due to cognitive decline. The safest drivers statistically tend to be in the 45 to 70 age group. Vulnerability to collisions for this group tend to be due to impairment as well, and this is well recognised. The difference is these are usually self-inflicted impairments such as mobile phone use, drink or drugs. But the general public know about this because road safety professionals work hard to raise awareness. They are included in the Fatal Five campaign, as it's known. However, there's little effort going on to raise public awareness that one of the main reasons older drivers are more likely to crash is from a cognitive medical condition such as dementia. This is largely because data is very difficult to come by after a crash due to data protection considerations, etc. Public perception about older drivers is largely based on very rare but headline hitting catastrophic type of collisions, such as unintended acceleration in a car park or driving the wrong way along a motorway involving an older driver. However, these type of collisions do not represent older drivers in general and can easily be explained by a cognitive impairment such as somebody that carries on driving when they are unsafe due to dementia. Junction collisions, which are also overrepresented in the older age group, are often blamed on failing eyesight, but in reality, cognitive impairment is far more likely to play a big part in this. So the question is, are we being fair to older drivers by including all in the same group? Or should we not be separating out those who have a cognitive medical condition? After all, we do that with drink drivers, don't we, for example? In other words, is public perception more swayed by inaction by road safety community rather than what older drivers do behind the wheel? This series of three videos will take a closer look at the facts and ask the question, are we being unfair to older drivers? And I want to start by showing just a small part of a video I helped BBC Stories websites to make a while ago after a lady in her 70s agreed to be filmed having a driving assessment.
I wouldn't see anybody. I'd be trapped in my house. And I don't want you to take that away from me just because I'm old.
Just going to ask you a quick question. Is there anybody behind you at the moment?
Yes.
Okay.
Got both lights on. I haven't even got mine.
Yeah, so overall, Polly, I thought that was a nice, safe drive. As a passenger, I actually felt very comfortable for that.
Assessment for Polly today was fairly typical of the vast majority of people we assess. Taking away somebody's independence when we do have to say it's not safe for them to drive and recommend they retire from driving is a difficult thing to do, so we don't take it lightly, that decision.
Yes, I do feel confident, and I do feel relieved that I can carry on and hold my head up high, especially when my son and heir says all oldies need to be off the road. I said, they were so what? I did pass this test. And he said I'm still okay for now.
Now, the reason Polly agreed to appear in this was in support for a friend whose husband had been unfortunately killed by an elderly driver who was driving the wrong way on the motorway, which by all accounts seemed to be due to a cognitive issue. Here they are explaining what happened.
Your lovely Ian was killed outright by a batty old bird of 70 driving up the road the wrong way round.
Well, people are driving 80s, 90s, and I don't disagree with it. A lot of people are compass mentors and perfectly safe on the roads. But the day they're not safe, who tells them?
But if they are not safe, who tells them? That question underlies the reason for making this video in many ways, because there is little help for those family members who can easily identify an early decline in the driver's safety. And this is often linked to fairly obvious cognitive decline. So let's have a look at the type of collision that was mentioned in the video, a head-on crash when someone drives the wrong way along a motorway or dual carriageway. It's difficult to explain this type of collision in the absence of a cognitive impairment. You can imagine the driver taking the wrong exit from a roundabout, which takes them down the off-slip, but surely most drivers would soon realise what was wrong and pull over safely. What else can explain the reason why anyone would continue to drive at speed against the flow of oncoming traffic, often for many miles, with people coming in the other direction, flashing their headlights to try and warn them? The same argument could be used for another headline hitting catastrophic type of collision, pedal confusion, sometimes known as unintended acceleration. This is where the driver is manoeuvring forward or backwards in the car park, for example, when they hit the accelerator instead of the brake. Now, from what I understand, this is quite a common error for people who drive automatics. However, most will realise what's wrong and correct the problem very quickly before any significant damage can be done. What makes this catastrophic is when the driver doesn't have the cognitive power to realise, and so just keeps pressing the accelerator pedal harder and harder. This means the car can build up quite a speed until it's stopped by something solid like a brick wall. Unfortunately, if a pedestrian's in the way, of course it doesn't end well for them. So it would seem that dementia is likely to be one of the main causes of these catastrophic collisions that give all older drivers a bad reputation. I also want to mention one collision type that older drivers are particularly vulnerable to: a right turn across traffic at a junction. Many drivers of all ages, of course, have a collision at a junction, but statistically, older drivers are more likely to be involved with this type of collision. Many people assume this is just due to failing eyesight or the inability to judge speed so well due to aging, but when you sit next to enough drivers, you notice there is more to it than that. As you imagine, from a junction safely when turning right onto a main road requires two different skill sets. And when there is a hidden area on the main road, such as a corner, the driver needs to multitask by using both skills at the same time. So firstly, while sitting safely at the junction, looking for a gap in the traffic and deciding if it's safe enough to start to emerge. And secondly, steering the car out of the junction to position in the correct part of the road before accelerating up to the required speed. If there is a corner nearby, that potentially hides an oncoming vehicle. The driver therefore needs to continuously monitor that hidden area whilst steering out of the junction in case something turns up at high speed. Now, when you sit next to many of these drivers, it is clear that those who are cognitively impaired find it quite difficult to do this multitasking, meaning that once they have made the decision to go, more often than not, they will just carry on whatever turns up at that corner. The danger area is not checked again as they emerge. At this point, their safety is purely down to luck, depending on whether something comes around that corner or not. The danger sign could easily be identified on a standard driving assessment as long as the assessor has been trained on what signs to watch for. However, at present, road safety organisations actively discourage these driving assessors from having anything to do with drivers who have cognitive impairment, and therefore no development training is widely available for them. In fact, road safety professionals tend to wash their hands of this type of intervention completely and refer drivers over to the medical profession. But this is clearly a serious road safety issue. So, should road safety professionals at least put some effort into developing something which allows those drivers and family members to get help if safety concerns have been expressed, rather than let them to their own devices? Please join me in part 2, where we will investigate the current system that these people have to try and navigate and why it's seriously in need of improvement, in my opinion.
All it takes is one trip.